Yes, sir. So, 70-year-old lady by name X and occupation and a resident of
Just
Kochi.
clicking on the
Uh,
slides. Keep clicking.
so uh, she came with chief complaints of ulcer over the left side of scalp and forehead. Uh, so we have to ask the duration of the ulcer, and she might also have other chief complaints like pain over the site and swelling, associated swellings in the face and the neck. Coming to history of present illness, uh, we have to know the onset of the ulcer and the duration for which it is present. We should try to get the etiology of the spelling from the history. So we have to ask for any history of chronic wound, which may be post-traumatic or a chronic infective wound, uh, which uh, which was there before the lesion started increasing in size. And was there any pre-existing skin lesion? Any history of exposure to sunlight by occupational means? And any history of radiation exposure in the past, and is she in an immunocompromised state, uh, which might be secondary to HIV or any immunocompromised diseases like post organ transplant or any other malignancy. Then any history of chemical carcinogen exposure like arsenic and hydrocarbons. Then any complications as a result of the illness, the history, we should ask for any symptoms suggestive of infection like pain and fever, uh, and also symptoms suggestive of metastasis. Any associated features like a pain, which might be secondary to infection or spread into the deeper plane.
Dr.
Any,
Abhinandan,
yes, sir.
sorry to interrupt you. What is the positive history you will ask in this case, being a scalp lesion? Sun exposure you have told. Apart from that, because it is nearer to the hair bearing area of the scalp, isn't it? Abutting almost onto the hair bearing area of the scalp.
Any usage of hair dye?
Use of hair dyes. Earlier they used to contain ammonia and kind of things. Okay.
Yes.
Nowadays you get a lot of ammonia free because she is a very old lady. Probably she could have used some of those things also. So you should ask for such a positive history. Okay.
Yes, sir. And any feature suggestive of a regional spread, like any other swellings uh, around the ulcer, and history of any similar skin lesions elsewhere in the body, and any history of any treatment taken, like if she underwent a biopsy for the present condition, or any imaging done, or any surgical procedure was done for the present skin lesion.
So, Abhinandan, two things.
So,
If you can go back to your previous slide, you said the onset and duration.
yes,
Like
sir.
a DD of cutaneous malignancies, non-melanoma cutaneous malignancies. Can you tell me which are the slow-growing malignancies, which are rapidly growing malignancies, which malignancies have a tendency to involute by themselves, which malignancies rapidly present with distant metastasis? So, based on the duration of symptoms, can you get an idea of what sort of tumor it was?
Yes, sir. Basal cell carcinomas are usually slow growing, and squamous cell carcinomas can have a rapid onset from a pre-existing any chronic wound is there. There is sudden onset of rapid growth, which is a feature of squamous cell carcinoma.
Growth is a feature of another skin lesion. It's not the SCC alone. So there is a particular skin lesion which grows more rapidly than an SCC, but also has a tendency to involute. So do you know what that lesion is? It grows much faster than an SCC.
Malignant melanoma grows.
Keratoacanthomas Those are tumors
Benign skin lesion.
rapidly and show all features of invasion and erosion and whatever. But they also have a propensity for involuting by themselves. So, like you said, basal cell are slow growing, locally destructive, rarely metastasizing.
Yes.
Squamous cell carcinoma is moderately rapid in its growth and in advanced stages can present with metastasis. But there are really other tumors which are very bad, which are very rapidly growing. So the most rapidly growing ones are keratoacanthomas, angiosarcomas, and Meckel cell carcinomas. So
Yes.
temporal progression of these tumors, you can come to an understanding what could be the etiology. And the word immunocompromised is not accepted, it's immunosuppressed because we don't, at least in our country, at least in Amrita practice and many centers, a lot of these patients who have BCCs or SCCs are the ones who are on post renal transplant or post liver transplant. So they are usually immunosuppressed either by drugs or by disease themselves. If you have a leukemia, you're immunosuppressed. So these patients are not immunocompromised, they're immunosuppressed either by
Yes.
disease or by medication secondary to a surgical procedure. And another chemical that has been implicated is thorium. A lot of the earlier times, patients who had exposure to thorium had cutaneous malignancies. And you also have to ask for chronic, I told you this afternoon, chronic dermatitis or a
Yes.
history of patient having psoriasis for which they had UV therapy with Sorolin. So that also it's the inflammatory conditions also can lead to as a predisposing factor radiation exposure, immunosuppression. All these are, but the pre-existing skin lesion should be. She might have had scalp psoriasis, and she might have taken Sorolin for that. So you've got to tailor and then understand from the temporal progression of the lesion what lesion it can be. Yeah.
It's a commonest site for psoriatic lesion also.
Yes, sir. Scalp
Being a
is.
scalp, yeah.
Yes, sir. In coming to past history, any history of malignancies, other malignancies, or skin malignancies in the past, uh, any past history of immunosuppressive therapy or organ transplant, and any past skin lesions which were treated. And coming to personal history, addictions like smoking, alcohol intake, and any comorbid conditions, and diet. And then coming to family history.
BCCs that are possible.
Sir?
Any syndromic BCC is possible.
Yes, sir. Xeroderma pigmentosa.
Xeroderma pigmentosa or SCC. I'm asking for BCC. Any syndromic BCC that you know of. Have you heard of Gorlin syndrome?
Gordon syndrome, yes, sir.
So Gorlin syndrome is a type of nevoid basal cell carcinoma. So you should understand know what what are the parts of the Gorlin syndrome. If someone has Gorlins, I've seen two cases of Gorlins in practice. Do you know what are the things that you get in Gorlin syndrome?
No, sir.
Okay, so you know the coexisting systemic problems like xeroderma pigmentosa, albinism,
Albinism, yes.
and congenital P53 mutations. All of these are pre-existing factors for developing a cutaneous malignancy. Yeah, good.
Coming to the examination, general examination, we have to look for built and nourishment and the Karnofsky scale and other vitals and general signs. Coming to local examination, on inspection, 10 into 6 centimeters irregular, roughly oval shaped ulceroproliferative lesion over the left frontal region and forehead, extent of which is anteriorly it is 3 centimeters from the left eyebrow, posteriorly around 15 centimeters from the occiput, medial extent is 5 centimeters from the midline, and lateral around 10 centimeters from the tragus. The surface of the lesion appears to be uneven with blackish nodularity with ulceration in the center. Ulcer of size 2 into 2 centimeters is present in the center. The edges of the ulcer appear to be everted, and floor is covered with scab. There is no active pus discharge with bleeding noted. Surrounding skin appears erythematous, and seborrheic keratosis noted in the left side of the face. Coming to palpation, the inspected findings with regard to site, size, shape, and extent are confirmed, and we have to elicit for any tenderness and local raise of temperature. And the base of the ulcer should be palpated and consistency. If it is hard, we can make a diagnosis of malignancy. And fixity of the lesion to the underlying structure, it will give an idea of the extent of the lesion. Uh, Coming to regional examination, any other similar lesions surrounding should be noted. We should look for lymphadenopathy in the cervical parotid region, post-auricular or occipital region. Systemic examination, full body skin examination should be done along with the major systems. So my diagnosis in this case is an ulceroproliferative lesion over the left frontal region and forehead, probably of malignant etiology, likely squamous cell carcinoma. My differential diagnosis would be basal cell carcinoma and malignant melanoma.
Yeah, you forgot to mention that she has multiple satellite lesions, which could be premalignant nevi on the left parotid region. And if you look at her photograph, she has multiple nevi. Are they nevi or warts? I don't know. If you can look at her picture, there's another picture that I saw where she had, yeah, so preauricularly, in the zygoma, she has multiple pigmented lesions also. So, in the background of having a scalp and forehead lesion of suspicious malignant etiology, we have to assume that these other lesions also are pre-malignant or have the potential to change. So, your history should have been whether she had such a lesion to begin with in the scalp, which has had malignant transformation over months or years. This doesn't look like SCC to me. I mean, it looks more like a uh, diffusely infiltrative BCC, but then you only know that with biopsy. So your diagnosis for any skin tumor should be the primary lesion, and you've got to make a mention of other possible premalignant nevi or premalignant lesion uh, in the face. Yeah.
Yes.
So fine. So you gave it. You obviously can't say this is an SCC without having any biopsy done. So it's better to go with a differential diagnosis. Why do you think this is malignant in the first place?
The edge of the ulcer looks everted, and
So the center of the ulcer is necrotic. You have a necrotic base, and you have
it is
everted
the,
margin.
she's an elderly female.
Age doesn't really have to do with malignancy. We have young patients who have scalp malignancies, but looking at I'm asking for the signs. Signs are it has a necrotic base.
Yes,
It's probably fixed to the underlying dermis, so it is a full thickness lesion. And then you have an everted margin, which is irregular, correct?
yes,
It's
sir.
irregular margin. So it's an irregular margin, diffuse lesion with a necrotic base and fixity through and through with the dermis. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you would confirm that by how? What is your how do you confirm the diagnosis?
I'd like to investigate the patient for confirmation of my diagnosis and to support my diagnosis and as a part of preoperative workup. For confirmation, I would like to do an EDS biopsy. And that will give the histological diagnosis of malignancy.
Yeah.
And I would like to, based on the histology, I would like to go for imaging.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to do a CT scan head and neck region.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if any lymph nodes are palpable clinically, I would like to do an FNAC.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a very important thing here, but you never mentioned that in your clinical examination. You've written MRI if perineural spread is suspected, but you also have to clinically evoke the signs of perineural invasion. So you've got to test for the distribution of the trigeminal nerve in any facial carcinoma that you have. Granted that this is over the forehead and scalp, it doesn't make too much of sense because V1's distribution is below all that, but still, for any facial tumor, especially once you go to once the tumor involves the dermis, its propensity for perineural spread increases a lot, especially if it's a large nerve, which is more than 1.1 millimeter in size. So you have to elicit signs like deep-seated pain, paresthesias along the distribution of V1, V2, V3 uh,
Yes.
for any, and it's not the, what are the nerves that you would suspect perineal invasion if you have a cutaneous malignancy?
So branches of facial nerve can get involved.
How can the branches of facial nerve be involved if there's a skin? Facial nerve is a motor nerve. The only cutaneous supply that it has is in the concha and the external auditory canal. So how does the facial nerve get involved in a cutaneous malignancy? So it's
Branches
usually
of
where the
trigeminal.
temporal nerve.
Yes,
The
auricular.
okay, because the buccal nerves are in close proximity with the buccal branch of facial nerve. So your perineal invasion shouldn't focus only on the trigeminal nerve and the enhancement of the foramen ovale and Meckel's cave. It also should look at the facial nerve and the stylomastoid foramen and the CP angle to see if it has spread. So all cutaneous malignancies have a high risk of perineal invasion, and your perineal invasion is not limited to the cutaneous distribution of the trigeminal. It is also to the facial nerve. So you should have asked that in your history if any abnormal numbness or tingling or deep-seated pain if the patient has. So that is what you'd have to obviously see. Yeah.
Yes.
So imaging, you said CT scan of the head and neck. Why do you want to do a CT scan in this patient? Are you suspecting calvarial erosion or intracranial extension?
Yes, a squamous cell carcinoma. It can erode the bone. It can infiltrate the bone. So I want to rule out.
But when you clinically tried to move the lesion, was it mobile or was it fixed to the underlying pericranium?
I
Is it
didn't
is
examine
it
the patient.
mobility?
He has got only a picture, no? Yeah.
Oh, okay, sir. So, depending on whether you can elicit mobility or not, you would like to get a CT scan to look at the calvarial erosion. And if you're suspecting perineural, especially if it's in the danger area of the face, where the trigeminal distribution is present, you would like to do an MRI to look for large nerve involvement. So, how does that change your management? If somebody has perineural invasion on MRI, you're seeing skull base invasion on the MRI, like ovale or rotundum is enlarged. There is effacement of the fat pad at the skull base foramina. What would it change? What would it? How would it make your management any different?
Firstly, the surgical excision, sir, and the plan for reconstruction,
No, does it
as
have a
well as adjuvant therapy.
No, does it have a bearing on the prognosis? If you see extensive foraminal widening, or if you're seeing the Meckel's cave dura enhancing, or if you see the stylomastoid foramen enhancing, what does that tell you?
Do you understand why this question is, Dr. Abhinandan?
Yes.
Now, what is the significance of this? Suppose if you see Meckel's cave enhancement or widening of the foramen, stylomastoid foramen,
So what happens is this patient moves from being potentially curable to incurable.
Yes.
Okay, so you might resect the primary tumor for local control and give radiation, but the patient is going to fail at a distant, inaccessible site like the foramen ovale or rotundum or the Gisserian area. So it makes the patients potentially incurable if they have a skull base foramina or skull base involvement. So MRI is right. In my book, I would take MRI for all cutaneous malignancies of the face, especially in the danger area of the face, because these tumors have very high propensity for perineural invasion, especially some of the bad histological subtypes. So you've got to do that. Yeah. So when you take the biopsy, what should be the importance in how you would conduct the biopsy? You said you take it from the edge of the lesion, which I accept, because the center of the lesion generally is necrotic.
Yes.
The lesion is more viable tissue. But what should be the importance of that biopsy? Like any other biopsy you take, what should you ensure?
We should ensure that we reach the subcutaneous plane.
No,
The
you
whole thickness of the lesion we should try to take.
you have to take the reticular dermis. You do not go to the subcutaneous plane and expose the fat. You have to take the reticular dermis. Just like a mucosal malignancy where you want to see basement membrane involvement, you want to see reticular dermis involvement because that changes the Clark's and Breslau's and all the other staging systems that we have. So your biopsy should be up to the depth of the pathologist should be able to tell you the depth that you have taken the reticular dermis. They should be able to comment on the reticular dermis. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, in which patients do you will a scalp SCC has got a very bad feature that it can erode the bone, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, if you have a large scalp tumor, I mean, we're talking hypothetically here because this patient, we don't have the history, we don't have too many findings. Hypothetically, what are the intracranial structures that are commonly involved by scalp SCC?
Dura might be involved.
So the first barrier, obviously, when the calvarium is breached, is the dura.
Yes.
Yeah. Then, if you have a lesion in the vertex or the midline, what else can be there?
Dural venous sinuses.
Yeah, the superior sagittal sinus can be involved. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And if
Yes,
it is
sir.
deep, at the brain parenchyma. So these are very advanced cases. So for that, you need a combination of CT and MRI. So you should understand the logic. If it is a mobile lesion on the scalp, if it is superficial, a CT scan might give you just enough information about the calvarial, whether it is involving or not. But if you suspect anything deeper than that, then or perineal invasion, you have to look for a MRI because that is what is going to give you the dural involvement or dural enhancement. CT cannot show dural enhancement, but MR can show dural enhancement. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And which lymph nodes would you focus on in your imaging?
So parotid group of lymph nodes,
Not
and
yet pre-auricular group of lymph nodes and
preauricular, parotid, and also the occipital if posterior leads involved.
scalp lesion. You look at the occipital and level 5 lymph nodes also. So the position of the primary tumor also guides where you specifically focus on looking for the lymph nodes, especially if it's a T3 or T4 clinical lesion, which is level of depth of level is level 4 or something like that. You would look for preauricular, parotid, and then occipital lymph nodes. And once these are the first echelon nodes. Once these nodes are breached, then you can go to the deep cervical lymph nodes after that. Yeah. So biopsy, imaging for local extent, targeted imaging for your lymph node metastasis, histopathological confirmation of the lymph nodes by FNA, which is very correct. And if you have a very aggressive tumor like an angiosarcoma or a Meckel cell carcinoma, you might want to do a metastatic workup on that patient, which is agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
sir.
based on your impression, is this a low risk area or is it a high risk area of the face? let's assume that this is a squamous cell carcinoma.
Yes, sir.
We leave basal cell carcinoma for the time being. So, in your clinical impression, is it a low risk tumor or is it a high risk tumor?
So it is a high risk tumor.
So, why is it a high risk tumor?
Uh, the size of the lesion is more than 1 centimeter. Uh,
It's
the
one.
face,
What is the cutoff for SCC? Size is more than 2 centimeters. Diameter of the tumor is more than 2 centimeters. Okay.
mm,
And then
yes.
what are the other high risk features for squamous cell carcinoma?
So especially the tumors which are located in the H area of the face are high risk tumors.
This patient, it's not on the H area. This is in the M area of the face.
Yeah, yes,
This is in the
and
forehead, right? This is in the M area,
yes.
not in the mask area. So, what else?
If the borders are irregular, ill-defined, poorly defined borders,
Yeah, so that is more in terms of basal cell than for SCC. Here, the tumor depth more than 2 millimeters or involvement of the fat.
yes,
If the imaging shows or pathology shows any perineal invasion, poor differentiation of the tumor compared to well differentiated tumors, and if the patient is immunosuppressed, these are some of the bad features in
rapidly growing.
and rapidly growing. These are some of the bad features of a squamous cell carcinoma. So, can you clinically stage this tumor? You've seen the size, and imaging is not showing any lymph nodes or any bone or skull base invasion. Can you clinically stage this tumor?
Yes. So according to TNM staging, it is T3 N0 M0.
This T3 N0 M0. Okay. So, this is a stage 3 tumor. How would you like to manage this patient?
So since it is a uh, high risk high risk tumor, I would like to go for standard surgical excision, sir.
Let me just correct that in between. When I said more than 2 centimeters, I meant that for non overall. But if it's in the M region, it's 1 centimeter.
Once in yes, sir.
Whereas if it's in the H region, any H
It's two
is
centimeter.
any H is bad, and like you mentioned, the poorly defined borders and immunosuppression, rapidly growing tumors, poor differentiation, and invasion beyond subcutaneous fat is high risk. Some authors say 2 millimeters of subcutaneous involvement. I think NCCN says 6 millimeters of subcutaneous involvement, but just know that the thickness also makes a point for the tumor becoming high risk. That's all.
Yes.
Okay, so what would you like to do for this patient? Surgically, what would you like to do?
Yes, I would like to plan a standard surgical excision with a margin of at least 6 mm and for primary reconstruction of the defect.
Okay, so you think this patient is surgically fit and you want to do a standard surgical excision. So, what are the types of excisions? We discussed this. What are the types of excisions that you can do for squamous cell carcinoma?
So first we have to categorize the patient. Is he a low risk patient or a high risk? And if he's a low risk and stage of the disease is early, like T1, we can plan for local treatments.
So, I would say that you do local. So, local treatments means non-surgical treatment.
Yes,
So, I would rather consider non-surgical treatment for
in
pre lesions like actinic keratosis.
yes.
So, what are the non? So, let's discuss the non. What are the non-surgical treatments that you know of? Certainly
So
not
topical therapy,
T3 region.
not
So,
for
we
this. Yes, sir.
would discuss this in this patient's context. But what are the non-surgical treatments that you know of?
So topical therapies have been described with using imiquimod and 5-FU.
Yeah, so that is for very, very small lesions, patients who have pre-malignant lesions, patients with BCC, those are quite okay. But if you look at NCCN really doesn't really give non-surgical treatment as a treatment for low risk, unless it's very localized disease, where the treatment is usually curettage and electrodissection. It's called CNE.
Yes.
So curettage, electrodissection, topical imiquid, and topical 5-FU offer very localized, very small, very low risk squamous cell carcinomas.
Yes.
But what is the problem with these non-surgical treatments?
We can't have the biopsy of the lesion.
We don't have pathological diagnosis, we don't have
Physical diagnosis we don't have. Yes.
examination, and we don't control the margins.
Yes, sir.
So, if you want to make it oncological, like you said, you have to do either a standard excision or you can do a
If she is inoperable, we can give
no.
her
What is the other surgical technique that we can do?
most microsurgical technique.
So in Mohs, what do you achieve in Mohs that you cannot achieve with standard excision?
So we can get a close margins and save vital structures from excision, from
So
damage.
Mohs allows for real-time examination of the circumferential peripheral and deep margins.
Yes.
Whereas if you're going to do standard excision, your margins are going to be wider, or your standard excision has to be supported by frozen section or permanent histopathology with the aim of going back if the margins are close or positive. Correct? Whereas
Yes.
Mohs allows you to control for the margins with fewer millimeters and margin also. So like you said, you can avoid damage to the facial aesthetic subunits, and you can limit the amount, especially near the eyelid or the nasal aesthetic unit. You can do much more refined close proximity surgery than a standard excision, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me the technique of Mohs?
So the surgeon excises a saucer of tissue, angling the scalpel at 45 degrees, and then the surgeon divides the tissue into half and further into 4 quadrants, and labels the top portion and the uh, edges, so that I mean the deeper margin as well as the peripheral margin. He labels it, and it will be sent for intraoperative frozen section. And based on the result, a further excision is planned.
Yeah. So, what are the disadvantages in Mohs? See, the advantage of Mohs is that you're going to have lesser margin, and you're going to have more control over the margin because you have uh, frozen section control. What are the problem with Mohs? Hello.
Yes, sir.
What are the problems with Mohs?
So it is a tedious process, and we can't get for a complete clearance. Uh,
No, we can get complete clearance. That's why, in fact, Mohs is more recommended for recurrent lesions, high risk regions. It is recommended for ill-defined borders, large tumors. In fact, that's what Mohs is preferred. But one of the problems with Mohs is that frozen section examination depends a lot upon the dermatopathologist's experience.
yes,
You can have a lot of false negative in the frozen section that you do, and like you mentioned, it is a very resource intensive procedure.
yes.
What are the different types of Mohs? We discussed this also. The two types of Mohs are what? Based on the tissue fixation, how do they do Mohs in the past? How do they do Mohs now?
Earlier they had done intraoperative fixation,
There
like
is in situ fixation on the patient.
yes, on the patient
They used to
with
paint the lesion with
software.
zinc chloride, and then they used to excise, and then the surgeon used to see the margin, and then, but it have to wait for 24 to 48 hours, and you cannot do primary reconstruction because it was a staged operation. Right now, more of it is on based on the color-coded frozen sections that we are asking from the dermatopathologist. So
Yes.
you don't want to do Mohs because you don't have the expertise. You want to do a standard surgical excision margin of 6 millimeters.
Yes, sir.
And this 6 millimeters is in the greatest dimensions or even in the depth.
Even in the depth.
So if the scalp is not even 1 centimeter thick, no. So where will you get margins in the scalp if you excise something and expect 6 millimeter margin? You understand my question?
Yes.
So how do you get that? How do you ensure that margin in the scalp? So
We
practically,
have
your scalp
excised
is
this
more than a centimeter thick.
more than. Sir?
Even the thickest of scalps, it's not more than 8 millimeters in patients. So what do you practically do?
So if the involvement is still a subcutaneous, we remove the fascia also.
You mean the pericranium? You mean the pericranium?
Pericon, yes, sir.
Okay, so depending upon the depth of the invasion on table, you make a clinical judgment that you excise the pericranium. That's what we normally practice because the pericranium is a very good barrier for tumor spread. And very rarely do we go around and if at all the pericranium is breached, then you have to make a call whether you have to take a full thickness calvarial excision or you want to do just the outer table. So that depends on which part of the bone you want to excise. In some places, using a sagittal saw, you can harvest split thickness calvarial bone as a margin. In some places, you really can't has to be full thickness, but generally the pericranium is a good enough margin for your deep margin. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you have excised, the lymph nodes are negative, and this is a T3 lesion. So would you give the patient adjuvant radiation or not?
So adjuvant radiation, if the margins are positive, we plan for an adjuvant radiation. If
No,
there is a
possible.
peridural
If
spread,
re-excision is possible, you go and re-excise.
yes,
If it's not possible, then you give RT, obviously.
yes.
And then you look for
There is perineal spread in the
yeah,
biopsy.
perineal spread in the biopsy or any high-risk feature in the biopsy like abnormal pathology. Then you might consider this patient for high end, post-operative adjuvant radiotherapy. This is what you would consider the patient. Yeah.
Yes,
If the patient is unresectable or the patient refuses surgery, can you give upfront radiation for these defects,
yes, sir.
for these tumors?
Yes, sir.
We can give, so if the patient is not a surgical candidate or if she refuses surgery, you can
We
always plan the
can,
patient for a primary radiation modality as treatment.
yes.
Yeah. I'll leave it to Sir and everybody else to go through the reconstruction.
Okay. So planning my reconstruction, I would like to assess the defect, like uh, uh, what in the defect, what soft tissue is there, whether it is subcutaneous, muscle, pericardium, or the bone exposed. And I would like to have an idea of is there any requirement for post-op adjuvant radiation, uh, aesthesis of the reconstruction, that maintenance of the anterior hairline is important, and stages of reconstruction, whether the patient is ready for single or multiple stages, patient comorbidities and age, and patient expectations. These all I would like to discuss with the patient and uh, plan a reconstructive strategy. In this case, because it is a high risk lesion and our margin of excision would extend up to the perichondrium, and there might be need for a post-op adjuvant radiation. My my plan of reconstruction would be through a free ALT flap reconstruction in the first stage, and after the adjuvant therapy, I would plan for a hair transplant for aesthesis.
So, like we discussed, this is more than 50% forehead loss.
Yes,
So
sir.
none of our advancements will work here. And you might even want to stage the reconstruction. You want to excise it, put dressing there, wait for the biopsy report to come back for the margins. And once the margins are clear, then you can go back and do your free flap, because this is such a widely diffuse lesion.
Yes,
So
sir.
this might end up being a much bigger defect than the lesion is.
See,
Uh,
Abhinandan,
Yes, sir.
Abhinandan, like Dr. Deepak, what Deepak said, no? Putting a ENT flap at the first go is good. The problem is, no, in case it is positive somewhere, then you have actually exhausted one flap, and you've actually taken a lot of the time. Also, she's an elderly woman also. So it's better actually to stage the tumor. Either you can actually put a collagen sheet on top, or you can put a skin graft over there, and then wait for the histopathology, and then probably go in for a ALT flap as a second stage.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Abhinandan,
Yes, sir.
suppose if it comes out as a pigmented BCC,
Yes, sir.
the report has come out as BCC. Only
Yes.
the report has come out as BCC for this patient. But if it comes out as, I'm just asking you, BCC, what is the kind of management you want to proceed in this case? You want to resort to?
Sir, I would like to, even if it is a BCC, it is a high risk tumor, I would like to go for standard surgical excision,
Okay.
followed by reconstruction.
What reconstruction? See, these patients may not turn up for, as you said, no, the second stage hair transplant and all those things. Maybe for adjuvant radiotherapy, they may return. Usually, they don't come up. Okay. So,
Yes,
what
sir.
is that? You have to do the optimum thing over a particular period of time.
has any rotation
Uh,
Yes,
Sir, if
Dr.
removing till the peritoneum, we can burr the outer table of the skull, and we can do skin graft as well over there.
Pardon me? I don't get you.
So we can plan a skin graft, sir.
High risk BCC tumors. What are the tumors which are wont to go in for recurrence?
Sir, desmoplastic and some subtypes like
not desmoplastic.
Desmoplastic.
There is no desmoplastic. There is a
There's no
morphic
desmoplastic.
form,
Morphic.
small.
blood,
Yeah.
and basal squamous.
So
These are the
morphic form, is it going for recurrence? Is it prone for
yes,
recurrence?
I,
Yeah.
morphic of basal squamous, micronodular, and sclerosing are bad ones.
Yeah. So what will you do? And she has got multiple nevi also over the face. Dr. Deepak is there?
Sir, yes, sir.
No, he's not there. Okay.
I'm here, sir.
Yeah. Now only the biopsy has come out. I only gave the case. Now only the biopsy has come out as BCC.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah. That's why I just asked. Hey, you just proceed.
That's a very pertinent question what sir is asking. How does the biology of BCC determine your reconstruction? Because these four types of BCCs are highest for recurrence. So, in a malignancy, does the rate of recurrence decide your reconstructive management? Because remember, what Sandeep sir said, if you do free flap, you exhaust one option already.
Yes, sir.
And your donor vessel is also gone. The maximum donor vessel is the crucial temporal artery vein. Unless you're doing a muscle free flap with a skin graft on top and muscle to the pedicle line. Otherwise, you're exhausting your donor vessel. So,
So we can burn the outer table and put a skin graft so that we can monitor if any recurrence is seen.
okay. So you want to get a bed ready for a skin graft either with an intact pericranium or with the outer table taken off so that the marrow is exposed so you can put a skin graft.
Yes, sir.
That's what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
And like sir said, the biopsy came as BCC and it is a nodular BCC. Let's assume it's superficial or nodular, most common. Can he do any other procedure and stage it so that he can do the primary reconstruction at the same time with tissue?
Sorry, sir. Your voice is breaking actually.
No, sorry. What I meant was we got the biopsy as a indolent BCC, like superficial or the nodular type of BCC. There is
Yes,
no
sir.
peritoneal invasion. It is less than 2 millimeters in depth. No subcutaneous fat is involved. Can you do something to make the local tissue more available for reconstruction?
So we can do most microsurgical excision.
Okay. So, is there any role for tissue expansion in indolent tumors prior to the definitive excision of these tumors? Or rather, which sites are amenable for expansion and moving into the defect?
No
You can't
questions.
expand all of the scalp, obviously.
Abhinandan,
Yes, sir.
can you divide the defect into two? One as a forehead and the other
Yeah.
part as scalp.
Yes, sir.
Then how
So
do you proceed for reconstruction? As Dr. Deepak said, no?
get the anterior hairline with the help of a rotation, planning a rotational flap,
Huh?
and we can plan the forehead reconstruction with a skin graft
Huh?
or a local flap like a birotation flap, O to T flap, or any local flap we can plan for forehead.
How O to T will come here, but
OTT will come.
here how? I don't understand.
How OTT will come? See, you want to give a margin also and then excise it, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay, O to T will be difficult.
yes. Sorry.
So you're going to rotate the right scalp into the scalp defect. That's what you want to do. That's
Yes, sir.
what you have drawn.
Yes, sir.
I don't think the left scalp will have enough rotation to cover this
Question
defect.
for this, yes.
And the right scalp dotted line has to go in front and into the back. It's too back, I think. No, sir. Action,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
It's too back behind, no, sir.
See, you have to go up to the neck because you need about 5 to 6 times, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
For any rotation to occur, then you may have to go down up to the neck.
Yes, sir.
And
Okay.
what have you drawn that red line for? That is for your.
That is hairlines.
Oh, okay. So, is there any other way of reconstructing that forehead lesion? We want to do a bitemporal advancement, like from both sides, by forehead advancement, like with Poirot's triangle excisions, will it come?
Yes, sir.
From both sides. And the incision has to extend much laterally also, obviously.
Yes, sir.
Radhakrishnan sir, can we do like that? From both sides,
We
can
both sides because this side also I think you will fall short of left side also you will fall short of
yes,
by from the by side both sides advancement would be difficult I think because she has got
sir.
a lesion in the just closer to the supraorbital ridge also another lesion
Yes,
small
sir.
lesion she has got
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think your red line should, the excision should have included that.
include that also
Just
yeah.
on the left side, there's one black dot,
Yes, sir.
There's a, that should have been included in the cut.
Yes, yes,
And if that is not included in the cut, we don't have enough advancement from the left side.
yes, 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 yes. Maybe you can take it as two defects. One is the scalp part of it and the other is the forehead part of it. And then divide it accordingly. Initially, what you can plan is you can get away with whatever skin graft or whatever it is. Then you can wait for the biopsy report. Then you can plan for the forehead with some, as Deepak said, you put a tissue expander somewhere down because it is an indolent, slow-growing tumor. You can excise the cheek part of it also. Cheek also, there are one or two pre-malignant lesions. You can excise them and take the skin also to resurface the forehead.
Yes, sir.
AK Singh sir is there?
Yeah,
Sir,
yeah,
what is your this thing, sir?
yeah. I mean, pardon me if I have missed it out, but
Yeah.
a way I would like to reconstruct it. Are people aware with the Narayanan flap?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the posterior part of the Narayanan flap, based on the posterior branch of the superficial temporal artery,
Yes.
I think that scalp can be transposed anteriorly, and in the post and that area we can put a graft which would be covered by her hair. Considering
Okay.
her age, and
Yes. Yes.
I think the priority is not getting um, say putting in hair as far as the
Yes.
into a free flap is concerned.
Yeah.
I think a shorter procedure would be just to transpose the scalp based on the like the one now somebody showed. It's too small a flap, and too short a pedicle. But yeah, I agree. So it can be taken as an islanded flap also. It can be taken as a arrowed down, pedicle flap, and rotate it anteriorly onto it. She might have some hair onto the foot, which can, if she's that is objectionable to her, that part can be, either deepithelized, or that part of the scalp, just superficial, can be excised and put a graft onto it if she's really worried about it. But I don't think she should be worried about that. Her main worry is perhaps to get rid of the tumor. And the other option which I would consider is, if it comes, as we discussed, if it comes out to be a basal cell carcinoma, is we did discuss something about uh, radiotherapy also. So if this bone is not involved, then perhaps instead of a surgical option, radiotherapy may also be an option in this case.
Which one, sir? Which one?
I mean, if it's a basal cell carcinoma, and
Yeah.
it's so radiotherapy can also be an option to surgery.
Okay. Okay.
No,
Or
no.
even the
Have
temporoparato facial
onto it, counter views, if any, most welcome.
temporoparato facial. Will it be able to reach there, sir?
Temporoparietal can reach
Facial.
there, because temporoparietal, you can take it right up to the opposite side also, across the midline. So that's not a problem. But I think instead of putting a temporoparietal flap and putting a skin graft onto it,
Yeah.
that may be a little dicey as far the. So best is to take the whole of the full thickness of the scalp on the
Yeah.
posterior side, and rotate or transpose it, I would say,
Tra-
and the subsequent defect can be secondary
Skin
defect,
graft.
graft.
Yeah.
And
The
it will be
advan-
from the hair which will part onto the backside.
Yeah.
The
So that you will
advantage
get
is
get a
advantage is
hairline.
the hair. No, hair line would be there, and the hair would be the correct direction also.
Yeah, the hair will be on the correct direction.
Correct direction.
Because the scalp flap is good, like sir is saying it is good, sir, because you're accounting for the thickness of the defect that is created, and you're also reconstructing the hairline, even though it comes to the forehead, that can be de-epilated with many methods. Like you
Yes.
can dermabrade it and then take off the hair follicles, or give some lotion and do that. But the thick scalp flap will account for the contour very nicely. ALT and all will be very bulky.
It will
Even
be
if
bulky, quite
uh,
bulky.
Posterior scalp flap is probably the best option for this device. If you want to consider one unit as a reconstruction and finish it off.
Dr. Sandeep,
Yeah.
I think
No, the important questions, Abhinandan, is like we should have an idea, no? Because in such patients, we should, whether when we are going to actually do the reconstruction, are we going to do the reconstruction immediately or later? Do we have a facility for having a frozen section or not? But even if the frozen section is there, would you just go by the frozen section, or would you just wait for the proper biopsy? Because you have only probably one time to actually do the reconstruction. So that is one key thing that we have to always keep in mind. So probably
Yes.
excise it and then wait for the biopsy report and then go for the definitive reconstruction. And for her, we should actually think of doing something simple. I wouldn't go for a ALT flap. I would go for something very simple like a transposition flap to get the hair in position. Because when the hair is there, you comb. If there's some graft also, that would be actually hidden, quite well hidden. And then even you could even have the hairline actually slightly lower down also, not a problem. Because at that age, they would be too much concerned about it.
she may not be bothered about the hairline also. Most of the times.
Yeah. That is the thing. That is the thing. And small amount of grafts in the forehead, not a problem.
Yes, sir, because this is a symptomatic problem than anything else. It will be itchy lesion, easily traumatized lesion. I mean, she would want the lesion to be off rather than anything else. The problem is more symptomatic than life-threatening. So the scalp flap is like probably the best option for us in this patient, sir. Or a skin graft for easy monitoring if it is an aggressive lesion. I think these are the two options that we should consider. If it was a younger patient with greater scalp loss or outer table loss, then a free flap to withstand radiation might have been an answer. But I don't think in her it should be the first choice, sir.
If we are not going for radiation, then another option is, example, say for example, if she is diabetic, she's got bad this and she is a smoker, things like that, no? Then probably we could even excise it and put the Integra over there, wait for 3 weeks, and then put a skin graft, finish it off like that. Very simple thing. That is also possible.
The scalp cicatrization is not at all a problem because it doesn't limit any movement or anything like that. So
Yeah.
Integra or something for the platform we can give, and it will heal by cicatrization, which is totally acceptable, sir.
There is no functionality in this reconstruction. So straight away, and cosmesis is also not much involved.
Yes, sir.
So it's one-time shot we should do rather than proceeding it.
Yes, sir.
Sandeep,